There is a specific kind of frustration that only Bravo fans truly understand. It is not the frustration of a delayed flight or a bad meal. It is something almost personal, the feeling of showing up to a party that was absolutely supposed to happen, and finding the lights off and nobody home. That is exactly what went down this week, and if you have been refreshing your guide trying to figure out where Watch What Happens Live disappeared to, you are not alone, and you are not imagining things. Because here is what makes this particular disappearing act sting a little more than usual. This is not a quiet week on Bravo. This is not a slow Tuesday in February when nothing is airing and nobody is particularly invested. This is Summer House Reunion Week. Part 1. The moment that a significant chunk of the Bravo universe has been waiting for since the news broke about Amanda Batchelor and West Wilson, and what that news meant for every friendship, every alliance, and every carefully constructed social dynamic in that Montauk house. Viewers wanted the chaos. Viewers expected the chaos. And then they looked at the schedule and WWHL was just gone. Let that sit for a second. Gone. Not replaced with a special, not substituted with a repeat of something relevant, not even a rerun of an older reunion episode to tide people over. Just an empty slot where Andy Cohen's clubhouse energy usually lives. Now, to be fair, and it is important to be fair here, Memorial Day falling on Monday the 25th made the initial absence understandable. A holiday week, fine. But then Tuesday came. And Wednesday. And the slots stayed dark. That is when the questions started multiplying in comment sections and group chats, and honestly, the emotional reaction from fans felt less like casual disappointment and more like that specific feeling you get when you realize someone you count on just quietly stepped out without fully explaining why. Here is what actually happened, and it is a lot less dramatic than the speculation that started circulating, but it is also, in its own way, a completely revealing little window into who Andy Cohen is as a person outside of that hosting chair. At the end of the May 24th episode, the last one before the break, Andy told the audience directly. He said they were off for the rest of the week and would return on June 1st, right after Below Deck Down Under. He said it. It was out there. But anyone who has ever watched live television knows that the end of an episode is precisely where attention starts to drift, and a lot of viewers simply did not catch it, or caught it and filed it away in the part of the brain that forgets things by the following morning. And so the silence felt louder than it actually was. But here is the part worth sitting with, because this is where Andy Cohen the host and Andy Cohen the father become genuinely interesting to think about as the same person. He waited a long time to become a dad. Ben came when Andy was 50. Lucy arrived when he was 53. Those are not small numbers. That is someone who built an entire life and identity and empire before the particular gravity of parenthood pulled him in a completely different direction. And if you have watched him talk about his kids, even briefly, even in the casual way he sometimes drops them into conversation on WWHL, you can hear something underneath the polish of a television personality. Something that sounds a lot like a man who is very aware of time and very intentional about how he spends it. The Hamptons in summer with Ben and Lucy and the kind of high-profile company Andy tends to keep is not a frivolous choice. It is a deliberate one. And there is something worth acknowledging in the fact that he does not appear particularly apologetic about it. He is not issuing elaborate explanations or flooding his social media with reassurances. He told the audience at the end of the show he let his team handle the scheduling communication, and he stepped away. That level of comfort with his own decision-making is either deeply admirable or slightly maddening depending on how invested you were in watching the Summer House cast sweat through their reunion week without the accompanying WWHL energy to process it all. Now let us talk about what is actually being missed here, because it goes beyond a missing talk show episode and into something more specific about the function WWHL serves in the Bravo ecosystem. Watch What Happens Live is not just a talk show. It is a pressure valve. It is the place where cast members go after a reunion or a major episode airs, when their adrenaline is still running high and their filters are slightly lowered and the audience is primed to receive whatever spillover emotion did not quite make it into the edited broadcast. Some of the most genuinely revealing Bravo moments in recent years have happened not on the main shows, not even at reunions, but in that small clubhouse with Andy pushing just a little further than the producers expected. And with a summer house reunion that has been compared, with varying degrees of enthusiasm depending on who you ask, to the emotional magnitude of Scandoval, the absence of that outlet feels like removing a release valve from something that was already running at pressure. The conversations that would have happened, the hot takes from returning cast members who have their own feelings about Amanda and Wes's situation, the looks across the bar top when a particularly pointed question landed, all of that just did not happen. Or at least not yet. Because that is the other thing worth noting. Andy is coming back. June 1st, right after Below Deck Down Under, he will be back in that clubhouse. Which means he will be there for Part 2 of the Summer House reunion. And if Part 2 carries anything close to the emotional weight that Part 1 promises to deliver, the timing of his return might actually end up being more interesting than if he had been there all along. Sometimes walking back into a room after an absence gives a conversation a different kind of energy. There is catching up to do. There is reaction to process. The audience will be primed, the cast will have had time to sit with whatever happened in Part 1, and Andy tends to do his sharpest work when the emotional temperature is already elevated. Whether that plays out the way fans are hoping remains entirely to be seen. Reunions are unpredictable things. The moments you expect to be explosive sometimes flatten under the weight of preparation, and the moments nobody anticipated can suddenly crack something open that changes how you see an entire season in retrospect. Amanda and Wes's situation has been the emotional axis around which so much of this summer house season has turned, and the question of who in that house knew what and when, who stayed quiet to protect relationships, and who is going to have to answer for their choices with cameras and a reunion host pointed directly at them. That is not a question with a clean or comfortable answer. Andy Cohen being absent this week did not diminish any of that. If anything, it has let the anticipation build without the usual exhaust valve, and now there is an entire week's worth of viewer emotion ready to go somewhere. June 1st is going to be a very loud clubhouse. So here is where this lands, at least for now. Was it frustrating that WWHL vanished during one of the bigger Bravo weeks of the early summer? Absolutely. Was the communication as clear and visible as it probably should have been? Probably not. Does Andy Cohen owe anyone an extended apology for choosing to spend unscheduled time with his young children? That feels like a harder argument to make even for the most devoted Bravo loyalist. What this moment really reveals, underneath the scheduling inconvenience and the fan frustration, is how much WWHL has become load-bearing infrastructure in the Bravo viewing experience. Its absence was felt immediately, specifically, and in a way that speaks to how central Andy Cohen's voice has become in how the audience processes what they watch. He will be back, and something tells me the conversation is going to be worth the wait. What do you think? Are you relieved it was just a holiday break, or were you genuinely unsettled by the silence this week? Drop your thoughts below, because this is the kind of thing the comments section was made for. And if you want to stay ahead of everything happening this summer on Bravo, the reunions, the returns, the moments nobody sees coming, hit subscribe and stay close. It is going to be a very full summer.